Hello! Hey everyone, welcome back to Parkitect, welcome back to campaign mode. So in the last one we completed Coral Caldera and got the 2 gold coins there. Now we're looking at doing Mystic Oasis. So in this one, a rich Arabian landowner wants to turn his fertile desert oasis into a blossoming theme park. Can you turn a mirage into reality with the little available land, a blazing hot climate, and the rich but demanding guests? So in this one we need 400 guests in the park, which isn't too bad. Happiness rating of 75%. And then the optional goals are to get 100 guests in your park, 200 guests in your park, and do it by the end of March year 2. So really, we're going to look at doing this in a year if we want to get the 2 gold coins. I think that's where the main challenge is going to lie here, because if I remember rightly, it was fairly easy to get the 400 guests. But yeah, doing it in by March year 2, I mean that's the start of year 2, isn't it? So I suppose, yeah, we've got just over a year to bring in them 400 guests. So I think the best thing to do here would be to go straight on to pause. Have a quick look at what we've got. So the magic carpet, a spiral slide and a teacups. We've got a swinging ship, a wipeout, junior coaster, and a vertical drop coaster. That's like the Eurofighter, isn't it? No transport, and a couple of boat rides. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll want to get the water rides in at some point. A log flume will probably be quite good to have here, so I think if we research water rides to start with, and we'll build the Eurofighter and a couple of flat rides, and really start getting some guests into the park and get off to a flying start with this one. So I'll see you all over in the first time lapse. So we're going to work on our Eurofighter coaster then. Our Gerstlauer coaster. So I looked at different layouts for these coaster types because I wanted something that looked fairly realistic. I also wanted a very long layout for this. It's going to be the sort of star attraction for the park, and I wanted a high excitement and intensity rating to draw lots of guests to the ride and also have it look fairly realistic. So we started off with just a simple lift hill. The vertical lift hill like this type of coaster usually has, and then into the beyond vertical drop and into a loop. So that's all fairly simple to make. I do go back and extend the height of the lift hill later on because I didn't feel that, well, it couldn't make it through the layout, so we had to change that. After that it goes into a sort of overbanked turn, almost an inversion type thing, just using the left corkscrew and then the left corkscrew again, which is an element you do sort of see on some of these coasters. And then we start freestyling it a bit after this, rather than just copying a layout. I just try and go for whatever I think looks good, obviously following the sort of traditional Eurofighter layouts with lots of inversions and lots of sharpish turns and helixes and stuff like that. These can be very intense coasters, if you think of sort of rides like the Smiler at Alton Towers, where it really throws you about quite a lot. And I think, like I said before, this would be good for the more high intensity loving guests, the thrill seekers of the park. It took me quite a while to get this layout together. There you can see I'm just extending the height of the lift hill, and what I do cut out some of the footage here. We do have to chop bits out because otherwise the time, the whole video is just going to end up too long, and I like to keep them down as short as possible. I know these campaign playthroughs are a bit longer than my normal videos, say if I was doing a diorama or something like that. And then I changed the colour, and I really love this colour for the theme that we're going for, a nice turquoise colour. And you can see that once this station building goes in, it really complements it as well. just something to mention that for these builds, normally I try and do everything at the same sort of time, I do it in a good reasonable order, but for this it has been about a month since I actually did the build before I'm recording this time lapse, which is the same for the live portion coming up as well, so apologies if I do mention that again. It's just a case of sort of catching up on what I built. I do remember what this build was because it took me a whole sort of afternoon, and it only ended up being the coaster station that I managed to build. That's the trouble with these campaign playthroughs. I sort of leave the gameplay, I leave the park to go to the dogs basically while I play around with scenery, because obviously that's what I love doing in the game, and sometimes I just lose track of the sort of time and the budget that we have to play with, so things end up getting a bit chaotic in the park. But we will go back through and fix that afterwards before we start decorating things more, because you can see this is going to be a very heavily detailed build. Now, the style I was going for wasn't following on from the style that the campaign sort of gives you at the start. I wanted a more Moorish type build, maybe sort of Moroccan type architecture, and that's what I feel we've shown demonstrated quite nicely in this coaster station build, using lots of tall pillars, lots of tall doorway type pieces, and using the art shapes the best possible to my ability, because in this campaign there isn't much researched in the way of scenery and theming, so I don't actually have that many pieces to use, so I'm having to just get creative with the really generic stuff. And normally when I think of playing in vanilla, I think of using everything, all the DLC items and all the normal Parkitect in-game theme sets, but like you can see, we've only actually got 2 different sets researched at the moment, so I probably will be doing some research on scenery and theming, but until we get some more stuff researched, we're just going to basically have to make do with the pieces that we've got. And really, there is an awful lot that you can do with the basic shapes in this game, as you can see, and just putting them together in different ways to make things resemble the theme you're trying to go for. Using the blueprints tool quite a lot here as well to put the structure together, to try and save time where I could, even though it was still a very time consuming build. The main problem that I did face with the building style that I went for here is that the Gerschlau trains are 4 in a row, so they come out quite a bit further than the track, which is why I've just got it paused with one in the station there so that I can see the clearance for it. It's very tight what we end up with, but it does get through, and that's the main thing. So as long as the guests aren't sticking their arms out to the side, then we should be alright with that. I do like to sort of leave a realistic amount of clearance if possible, but I think it should be fine what we've got there. And once the first building's in, I do copy it across, and obviously we have to do the same, so I then go in and vary it, which you'll see in just a minute. But first, at this point, I'm putting in some custom floor tiles, again using basic shapes to cover up the ugly station platform, the in-game one that it comes with. And I really like how this tile looks. It's just adding a couple of different extra colours in as well to break up the palette a bit, and it fits nicely with the theme as well. I'm also quite happy with the queue line, although it looks a bit generic. The colours go quite well with everything. I will do more later on to decorate the queue a bit more and cover things up and make it look more interesting, but it's fine for now, it serves a purpose. So here you can see we're putting the second building in, and I had to go around deleting a lot. When you use so many art shapes, or basic shapes rather, and do so much detailing like this, it can be rather frustrating to remove everything, or to blueprint it, or to delete it, because you have to select every little piece. And yeah, obviously with deleting it, you can just do it using the right click when you're in the scenery editor, but sometimes I find it just easier to select everything and delete it like that using the bulldozer. So on this one I thought we'll just have a flat roof with a dome on it. It turned out that the exit for the ride is the more interesting looking building, and probably the one that would draw people's attention the most, but then I thought if we just stick a dome on the top of the other one, it will draw people towards that as well. So yeah, I think it works quite nicely with these coasters having a different station for the exit and the entrance, so that people can unload and offload the ride nice and easily and run simultaneously. We need to run as many trains on this coaster as possible so that we've got good operations for it as well. And then you can see that I've sort of added some pillars in the middle to tie the two bits together so that it's clear that this is one station. But that is the majority of the station to put together, so we will now go into a live portion and see how the park's doing. Okay, welcome to the live portion. This is recorded about a month after we did this build, so really I'm just catching up on where the park's at this point. I think I'm going to put it into pause mode for the time being, just because we've got quite a short amount of time to meet these challenge goals, the optional goals. So yeah, they need to be done by the end of March year 2, so the start of next year. So basically we've got about 12 months, give or take, to do it, about 11 months, to do it. And so far, we've made a very slow start, and I've spent way too much time and budget just building this nice coaster station here. So I think what I need to work on now is building up the selection of rides, doing some advertising and trying to get some guests in the park. So rather than doing loads of scenery and making everything look nice, I think we're just going to focus on getting this park rating up. Also, you can see there's a lot of vandalism around the park, so there's only 83 guests in, so there's stuff that's quite fixable for the time being, and hopefully that will immediately make the rating go up. We also need to get some shops and stalls in, because there are probably a lot of hungry guests. The experience rating is really low. Happiness is on 0, which isn't great. Hunger and thirst. Hunger doesn't look too bad. Quite a lot of thirsty guests though. So yeah, I think we need to have a look at that. Let's see. Can't get to the vertical drop coaster. Why is that then? We've blocked off the entrance, haven't we? Yeah, from a gameplay perspective, so far things really aren't looking too good. So I need to go around and fix some of these problems. We've got no staff. So if we just employ one of each, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is put some stalls down and then start building some rides. So let's get back into the time lapse. So welcome back to the time lapse section, and I will start by saying this entire section was an absolute nightmare. I played through the park several times and kept failing the goals, kept going back to the first save and kept failing. So in the end I just had to do the technique of blueprinting the coaster and the station and rebuilding it in a new map. So that's very unfortunate, but basically what happened was we let everything go to crap and the park just started falling apart. The guests weren't happy, there was litter everywhere, vandalism everywhere, and I just couldn't fix it in time to meet those optional goals and get it completed by March year 3. March Year 2. So yeah, we're in a fresh map, but with the same coaster and station blueprinted back in. Then I just made a very basic building to cover up the shops and stalls so that the guests' rating for the decoration isn't bad. And then I added in a few trees just to add to the decoration rating over there. Really, we're just going for completing the scenario goals in this part, and we're going to worry about making it look nice afterwards. So scenery is taking a back step here, which is probably what I should have done at the start anyway with this coaster, but I just got carried away building the station, as you saw earlier. So yeah, I need to learn to stop doing that and just try and make the goals and then worry about scenery once we've completed the campaigns, I think, especially as they start to get more difficult. Now, this isn't the last time either that I had to reload the campaign, level up and start again. This still happens several times because the time limit they give you just isn't long enough, really. And I just had to keep trying at it until I got there. But I put in this nice water coaster layout that I wanted to have in the map. I mean, this is the perfect attraction really for a map like this. I think you can theme it up really nice. So that's something that I'm looking forward to doing. I built the layout with a theme in mind, with a sort of Arabian or Moroccan perhaps theme that I'm going to put around the actual layout itself. But we will have to go back and do that because again I had to blueprint this one and start the map again. It's very frustrating, but it's the only way I could make the goals in this one. And you know, I guess that's sort of cheating in a way, but the game allows you to do it. You know, I'm not using any cheats or mods, so it's fine. As long as we can meet the goals, then it's alright, and we can always come back and use this coaster later on. So for the rest of this time lapse, when I sort of leave this part of the map, you will not see this water coaster again. It just disappears, and that's because it's not researched on the map when I go back in. So we have to wait for the research there. But yeah, I'm really happy with the layout. A lot of it's going to be indoors. It's going to be half dark ride, half outside section with the splash and stuff. Sort of inspired a bit by Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld. I think we can make a really nice sort of dark ride style water coaster with that. Now you can see me going back to the gameplay, wondering if we can make the guests, the number of guests required to complete the goals. We're not far off, to be honest, but it's still not quite enough. We miss out by a few guests, and then you have to hold it for 2 weeks, and basically it goes over the March Year 3, so I had to start again, load up the map. So I thought this time, just to get the guest count in, I'm going to quickly build a junior coaster, and I thought it would be a very quick build, but with the sort of space that I'd allowed myself here, I found it quite challenging to complete this layout and get back to the station whilst making it look sort of realistic and believable enough. So I went in several times and sort of went back and retraced my steps, I guess, and just tried to find a layout that worked nicely, because there wasn't an awful lot of room as well with the pirate ship over there, which I should also mention is just another ride to try and get the numbers up. Really, I don't even know if I'll keep it in the park after the goals have been met, because I don't really like the scale of that ride. I think it's a bit too big, kind of similar to the spiral slide as well. That's rather on the large side, but that's something we'll decide once the goals have been met anyway. At this moment, I just wanted to get this coaster finished and find a nice layout. So again, I did my favourite thing of making it a blueprint and moving it, just because it wouldn't fit in quite how I wanted. So I gave myself a little bit more room so that we could find a nice way of getting through to the brake run and finishing off the coaster. And that leaves us really to just do a bit of advertising, wait for some research, wait for the guests to come in the park and to meet them goals, and just a little bit of tweaking with staffing and things like that to make sure the guest happiness rating is high enough. I also put in an information kiosk because a lot of them couldn't seem to find the food and drink stalls. So yeah, just a few finishing touches before we meet those end goals. So I'll now see you all over in the live portion. Okay, so here we are, and we've pretty much met the goals finally after a very, very painful playthrough of this campaign. So let's just put it into play and watch the end of the scenario play out. And there we go, all goals completed, including the non-optional goals. Now, I do think this campaign would have been a lot more fun to play through if they give us a bit more time to get those optional goals, because March year 3, obviously you can see now I've done it in December year 1, but I have done the cheap thing of copying the rides over. So, you know, if you want to play it normally through and get the optional goals, you've really got to just build rides and not focus on scenery at all, which is obviously not something that I like doing. So now I'm going to spend the rest of this video completing the park properly and theming it up all nicely so it'll look completely different by the time we've finished. The only problem is the research, because I kept reloading the park up and starting again. It researches different rides, and now it's just not researching the water coaster, so I'm going to keep trying and hope that that comes up, because that's obviously something that we definitely want to put back in the park. Let's just try something quickly, see if this works. Don't tell me I didn't save it. Right, this is not going well. I don't think I've saved the water coaster layout. Or is that because it's not researched? Right, let's just hope it's because it's not researched. Is that one researched? Yeah, okay, so I think it's just giving us the ones that are researched in the blueprint collection. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we will research the water coaster and we'll be able to put that blueprint back in and theme it all up. So I'm going to skip forward a bit until I'm ready at a point where I can theme the park and finish it all off nicely. And I'll catch you back in the final time lapse, so I'll see you over there. So in this third and final time lapse, we get the sort of bulk of the park together. I feel like I've not really achieved anything up until this point except for meeting the park goals, which, as I said before, was a real challenge for this map. But now that we've done that, we don't have to worry too much about it. We've got a very limited amount of money at the moment, so I think I do just leave the game running for a bit in sort of sped up mode, just to save up a bit more money to build what we want. The water coaster did get researched, so I blueprinted it back into the map with this nice layout that we've got. And the first thing that I start doing is working on a station, and well, not just a station, but a full sort of warehouse building, or whatever you call it, for the actual dark ride sections of the water coaster. So about 50% of this ride is going to be covered up, and it's just going to be understood that it's a dark ride. Obviously I'm not going to do any interiors or anything, because you can't really see them in the perspective of this game. Some people like to do a cutout sort of section and do an interior like that. Sorry if you heard my phone going off then, I forgot to put it on silent. But I'm not going to do any dark ride sections sort of in the campaign playthrough, because it's, you know, there's not an awful lot of point to me doing it. So the first thing that I start working on is this big tower, which you'll sort of notice from all around the park is meant to be quite a nice sort of sight line, and I sort of feel like if you put something like this in, it stops the ride itself looking too tall and sort of dominating, which I don't really want for a water coaster like this. It's meant to be more of a themed attraction, a bit like the one at Orlando SeaWorld, SeaWorld Orlando, whatever it's called, Journey to Atlantis or something like that. So yeah, the majority of the ride will be a dark ride, and it will come down into this sort of final drop into the water splash, which goes over the path, which is a cool sort of element, I guess. Just playing around with different pieces then, so I'm using some of the window pieces to build like little turrets on the top that are in a sort of Arabian style theme, I guess. Using one of the pieces from the candy set, I'm not sure which one it is, marshmallow or something maybe, or I don't know what it's called, but one of the candies I'm using there on the top as the dome, and I think that looks really cool as a textured dome, something a bit different to the normal, just sort of usual one that I use from the art shapes. So this took absolutely ages to complete this building. I do cut some of the footage out because otherwise it would just be too long. Really it's just a case of trying to fill in all the space and make the front of it look like it's a facade, and then the back is just a basic backstage area, but also giving the building some shapes so it's not just one big box, because that looks a bit boring from the perspective that we see Parkitect. Yeah, had to try and make some different levels and different sort of towers and stuff like that to make the building look more interesting. This front part I think looks really nice. It's sort of inviting as you come up to the ride, sort of quite interesting, like, oh, what's that? Putting in some different sort of shapes as well, diamond shapes there in different blues and greens, just to give it that nice sort of almost like Moroccan type theming that we're going for in this campaign map. So yeah, you can see the sort of building come together there, and the backstage area that I put in. Again, like I said, I do skip out some of the footage because it does get a bit repetitive and boring to watch, as well as making the video really long. So I want to sort of keep them down to a nice amount of time. Hopefully this one will be about 50 minutes by the time it gets uploaded. Really, yeah, with this I'm just using the basic walls and adventure walls as well a bit to give it a bit of variation, and I'm using all the same colours, but I think that works quite well for this theming. I don't think there's sort of too much variation I could have done that would have worked well. Here I'm building the actual station platform and station building part of the facade itself. Obviously it all sort of rolls into one, it's all joined on. But I'm doing this with basic art pieces again, and some various sort of wall pieces to try and get that sort of Arabian shaped doorway almost that you see on that type of architecture. And I think the station bit actually turns out looking really nice once we get it all in. Put some nice roofing on there as well, and it's all sort of symmetrical, which is something else you want to sort of try and do when you're going for this architecture. I do think that sort of when you're playing in this game sometimes, especially in vanilla, it is too easy to just make things really boxy and really sort of rectangular and boring, and that's something that I want to try and always keep away from, even when doing the campaign maps, just to try and give everything, you know, a bit of shape and a bit of character, although it is challenging sometimes in this game. But I do think sort of using the stuff we get from the DLC pack, such as the different shapes and stuff, can really help you to make stuff that looks less vanilla, if that makes sense, and get some sort of variation with the building techniques that you use and with the shapes that you can make. As you can see here, then working on the station roof, I did modify the ride a bit because there just wasn't enough clearance there, and I wanted to have these two roof pieces sort of coming out the front. So again, it looks like a facade, but then behind it, it is really just a sort of show building. So yeah, you're only going to see this ride from the front and when you're on it. So all the parts you can't see basically are plain and boring looking and just backstagey. The sort of ugly backstage areas that they have to have for maintenance for these sort of big themed dark rides. And yeah, I think all in all, this is probably the best water coaster I've ever built in a game. It's not something that I've built loads of. I do think they can be quite difficult to theme, just because of the sort of way they're laid out, or not necessarily difficult to theme, but I think theming one of these takes a long time. But yeah, it's the perfect coaster really to theme to a sort of Arabian style theme like this. And I'm going back to the idea that I had in my last playthrough, which was a diorama, which is using sort of stuff like the wall climbers and the pillars just to make it look a bit more haggard and worn down, this whole building. So we're using these sort of ivy pieces and then just giving them different colours. I do go back and delete some of them because I think it is a bit overkill, and at some points we did have rather a lot. But yeah, all in all, I think that's pretty much the bulk of this building done. I do just add some pipes there for the sort of realism aspect on the roof and a big sort of air conditioning unit. I couldn't work out how to make these cogs turn and look right, so in the end I just used circle basic art pieces, which is fine. You don't need to go overboard, I think, with the sort of backstage realism in this game. So then I just sort of added a bit of foliage and some extra details and just polished off the last sort of bits of this area. Any sort of, when you're doing a building this size, sometimes you sort of miss certain bits and you're like, oh, I need some more of these pieces here or some more pillars there. And yeah, that's when you can see me using the adventure pillars there as what I like to sort of call decals. So, or like, vinyl sort of pieces where it looks like the paint's peeling off because of, wear and tear, basically. And I think that's really a cool little touch. Not highly noticeable, but I think it does add a little bit more character to a building like this. And at this point we're going to move on to working on the entrance plaza for the park and the main street sort of buildings. I didn't go for a big Arabian town or anything here, because I feel like that's been done before and probably a lot better than what I could do here. So in the end I just decided to have this one sort of building with facades all the way round, and I wanted to make something a bit more varied and different to everything else that we've done so far. So I decided to use the shapes to make a custom Arabian style doorway, and I think this comes out looking absolutely brilliant. I think this works perfectly. Just using the different sizes of shapes and sinking them in. And that's the thing, things that you can't see from different what's the word I'm looking for, from different perspectives in this game, you can just cover over and hide. So it's quite nice to sort of sink things in, and you can get different looking doors and windows and stuff using that sort of method. And then here I am adding a custom roof in, just using the basic art shape. I don't know why I keep saying art shapes, I think that's what we call them in Planet Coaster. Just using the basic shapes, the cylinders there, and placing them on slightly alternative grid sizes, and I think that looks really cool. I built something there before, but I was completely unhappy with it, so went back and changed this all in. Using the window pieces as well to cover up, to make that into a window really. Just layering them over the top of each other I think looks really cool. And this building style almost looks a bit Mediterranean, but I suppose we could get away with sort of southern Mediterranean going into Morocco, you know, where there's a sort of Strait of Gibraltar. You've only got sort of about 20 miles of sea between each area, so I guess the two architectural styles do sort of merge into one in a way, and we can get away with it for this theming. But yeah, this is sort of this would be the more wealthy sort of area of whatever place this is supposed to be mimicking, where they spend a bit more money on the buildings and make everything look a bit nicer, I guess. But again, it's a theme park, so it's an exaggerated version of whatever the theming is anyway. And I didn't really know what to do for this piece of wall, so I just stuck a load of diamond shapes on there as well, which fitted quite nicely. Spent quite a lot of time actually on that one building, which is something I'm really guilty of doing in this game. Heavily detailing things, and then realising that I've literally just filled like 2 square feet of the map, and I've still got absolutely loads to do. So I just made some custom floor tiles here again, in a slightly different style to the ones on the coaster station, and I felt these would fit quite nicely underwater. So we just have a little water section here, and we change some of the bits with the palm trees there as well to accommodate these floor tiles, which look really cool. I really like the way that this works as a door as well, so I copied it over here to where the main sort of shops are, and we just changed the colours a bit to make it look a bit more varied. But this is just the sort of basic foundations. I do build upon all this a fair bit more to make it all blend in a bit nicer later on. But we're just really trying to cover up that sort of depot building behind and have a really nice sort of facade in the front of this park. So many little techniques that I've found that are good to do in vanilla while doing this campaign playthrough, and I've actually really enjoyed it. I don't think I've played with mods for about 6 months now, probably since September challenge. I haven't really played that much Parkitect in general, to be honest. Actually, I just haven't had the time. But, you know, I have really enjoyed playing in vanilla because it makes you have to challenge yourself a bit more and see what you can do with the limited amount of pieces that the game gives you. Obviously, it's good having the DLC. I don't think I could do it without that. If I had to go back to sort of Parkitect how it first was. And it's funny actually because I've looked through some of my old campaign parks from when I first bought the game, and honestly they are terrible. I was actually thinking at some point I might do a video comparing the playthroughs that I'm doing now with the original ones, and just show you how bad my building actually was, but also how much it's improved over the years of playing this game. I think it might be something quite interesting to do. And but I think, you know, we're all the same when we first pick up a game. We're usually quite rubbish at it, and until you sort of get used to all the things you can do with it, especially with creative games like this, where you know you can also you learn from other content creators' techniques. You're watching different creators on YouTube and the stuff they do. Definitely gives a sort of inspiration for your builds. So really there I'm just rambling a bit, but we've in the time that I've been rambling, we've managed to pretty much complete that front facade and the entrance plaza, and I think it's looking really, really nice. So I'm just copying some more of these custom doors over to the magic carpet, checking the clearance there as well, and just adding a few more sort of purple and magic carpety colours, like magic colours that sort of fit the style. I do remember in one of my sandbox big sort of mega parks that I built a custom Aladdin statue. Now that would be perfect for this, but I just couldn't be bothered to make something like that again, to be honest. And it's also quite a bit more difficult when you don't have construction anarchy because of the height difference. And you have to put things at a height where the game wants you to. Well, I do think you can still do custom statues and models and stuff with the shapes, but it's not something that I'm terribly good at anyway. So, to be honest, I think I'll just stick to doing the architecture for now. And yeah, really, with covering flat rides again, that's something I'm also not so good at doing. It's just something that I do because I feel like I have to. I hate how some of the rides look when they're not covered up at all, and they're just using the ordinary fences that they come with and the paths. I do think that these rides can look a lot better just by some very simple theming and path covers and stuff for the queues. And that's what we do here. Using this trellis piece, or I think that's what it's called, for windows, which is a technique I've done for this style of architecture before, and I think it works quite nicely as well. And we're also adding some domes onto those buildings too. We've got the sort of different colours though, the darker blue and the toned down purple. I always like sort of building with toned down colours in this game. I never really like the sort of really bright, in your face, vivid colours. For the building styles that I like doing, I always sort of, make them a bit more toned down and a bit more, I don't know what the word is, but not so luminous. I guess more matted colours, I guess, if it is paint or whatever in real life. And yeah, that's just sort of how I like doing it. Again, adding some path covers here, some tiles, but using a different colour, using the purple there to go nicely with the magic carpet. And then I start working a bit on the queue line for the coaster. Now, I don't do an awful lot with this. I'm basically just covering up with some fencing and some walls underneath so that it doesn't look like it's just floating. I do put walls all around the coaster station as well, so it is sort of above ground level, and I think it looks quite good for people to sort of view it as they're coming up to it. It stands out quite nicely. At some point as well, I'm not sure if I record it, but I do add some supports to the lift hill of the Eurofighter coaster because I just think it looks a bit daft without them. So we do get those added in as well. And yeah, it's just the case of sort of finishing touches now for this coaster station and queue line, because all the groundwork's been put in. It's probably my favourite thing in the park, this. I really like how it looks, and to be honest, I should have carried that colour and that architecture through for more of the park, and that's like, I finished it now, but that's sort of a regret that I have. Unfortunately, this isn't a element for a wing coaster here. I am just placing them there so that I can blueprint them easily without selecting too much other scenery, and then just moving them in as a queue cover, path cover rather, for the jumper ride. It's all things to think about, just covering up the sort of maintenance unit and the entrance and stuff while the guests are coming in. I did actually end up doing this in sandbox in the end. Once I completed the goals, it gives you the option to continue in sandbox mode, and the only reason I did that wasn't to try and cheat or anything, but it was just to try and get the water coaster. Well, I suppose that is sort of cheating, but that didn't work anyway. You still have to wait for all the research to come through, so it does sort of give me more options that I wouldn't normally have in campaign mode, which I'm not actually sure what they are now, looking back on it. But basically, yeah, that's not something that I'll do in future. I was just really annoyed because I had to keep going back and trying this scenario again because of the limited time it gives you to complete it, and I just wasn't getting the water coaster in research, and I'd already built the layout. I just needed to blueprint it back in. There you can see the Eurofighter layout with the with the nice supports in as well. Very basic thing to do, but it just makes the coaster look complete. There's minimal or no theming basically around the coaster, not even much foliage, because I felt this would just look cool, like one of those coasters that just goes off into the desert, like something you get in like Abu Dhabi or Dubai or something. Thinking like the is it Formula Rossa, like the world's fastest coaster? I think that's in Abu Dhabi, and it just shoots out of the building and just basically flies around the desert. Looks really, really cool, that. So that's sort of partly the inspiration for that Eurofighter coaster. And I keep saying Eurofighter, but it could be an Infinity coaster. I really don't know. Feel free to correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong on that one. So the final thing we're doing here is building a station for the Junior coaster, which was a very basic station, but I wanted to use much brighter colours because it's a family coaster, because it's a sort of kiddie coaster. I wanted it to just look more fun and really exaggerating the sort of Arabian theme, going away from the more sort of realistic approach that we had to the rest of the theming. So I just put a really wacky bright coloured dome here, and then I'm just using shapes again to make the structure for the coaster station building. And that's yeah, very, very basic build that I put together. I didn't even really want to have this coaster in the park initially, but I'm kind of glad that I did, because it basically fills up the lineup of coasters that we've got now. So we've got the Thrill one, and we've got the Junior one, and we've got sort of water family coaster as well. So there's something for everyone in this park as well, and there's a good selection of rides as well. So yeah, with the only problem with this coaster station is that it's not completely symmetrical, but it basically just meant that I could only use basic shapes to build the entire structure, because the borders would like one of them would sit on the grid, but it looks sort of off grid because of the way that I've built this, because it's built slightly off grid. But it's fine, we just do the whole thing with shapes and it comes together looking fairly nice, fairly basic, but fairly nice. I don't bother changing any of the path or the cues or anything, because I think that looks fine. Just cover up the inside a bit, which you will see in a sec. It's not completely symmetrical either, because I blueprinted it across and put it the other way around for that roof section, but that's just basically because I couldn't be bothered to build the whole thing again. By this point I'd been building in this park for, I don't know, 2 months I suppose. I've not had an awful lot of time to be playing, so yeah, unfortunately it's just been as and when. The video uploads haven't been as frequent as what I'd like normally, so I do apologise for that. But I'm glad I took my time with this one and built it nicely rather than rushing it too much. It took a hell of a long time to complete. But yeah, I'm glad it's finished now, because it gave me quite a lot of struggle, this campaign. So that's it for the time lapse, and we'll go into the final section and view the park in its completion. So here we are in the completed Mystic Oasis Park, and as much as I've complained and moaned about how difficult this one was and how long it took, I'm actually really happy with the end result. I think this is probably my favourite one so far of the playthrough that I've done. I've enjoyed building the really different style of architecture and using different building techniques. Just going to take a little closer look at some of the details that you would have seen me build in the time lapse. So here is the sort of little Moroccan village that we've got, or rather the row of facades for the shops and stalls. These are all functioning shops and stalls with a utility building behind, and I just think that looks really nice as a facade as well. You sort of come into the central area, you've got the magic carpet as you come straight into the park, and this sort of gazebo type building on your left as well. And I think it flows quite nicely. I'm fairly happy with the layout of this one as well. I kept it fairly standard to how the map was when it was loaded up, just kept it going round a circle around this smaller lake with the bigger lake at the back, or the oasis rather. Without further ado, let's take a ride on the coasters. So the junior coaster has pretty standard stats with high excitement and a low intensity. We'll try and catch that one as it goes. And really it's just a standard layout with this one. It meanders around a selection of helixes over the oasis, lake, whatever you want to call it. And then back under itself. It actually took me quite a long time to build this layout because I kept going back to it and changing things. But yeah, it works fine as a junior coaster. And like I say, I'm glad that I put it in the park in the end, even though I wasn't planning to. Let's take a ride on the water coaster then. Again, this one's all about the theming. I'm actually going to have to do this to find the first car. Yeah, and I'm on it, so that's how this would start. I'll show you the stats afterwards for this one, for anyone who wants to see them. So we have the nice turnaround into the sort of first lift hill as we come out of the station, and then round into a helix drop type thing, into a slightly steeper drop into a dark ride section. And although this is a dark ride, I've just realised actually how fast it goes through the whole ride. It's actually a really short ride. I've only just thought about that now, sort of doing the POV of it. So what would realistically happen is there'd probably be some breaks down in the section after drop, or even a short water section inside the show building before it went up to the second drop and into the final splashdown. So yeah, we'll just pretend that there's a slow dark ride section in there as well. Otherwise the ride's well too short. But it's done now, I'm not going back to it, so it's fine. And that just leaves our Gerstlauer coaster. Like I say, I'm not sure if it's a Eurofighter or an Infinity coaster. I do see that it's stopping at the top of the lift hill. So I can't work out the operations for this game, how to stop coasters doing that. But it's just something that yeah, we're going to have to live with in my playthroughs, I'm afraid. It's really frustrating that it does that. I do try, I change the sort of times, minimum and maximum waiting times, but it doesn't seem to help. If I've got block brakes, it's just going to sit on the top of the hill. And it's really frustrating. I hate that it does this. We might as well take a look at the stats while it's... Oh, it's broken down, that's why. This always seems to happen when I do the playthroughs. So it's got a very high excitement and a very high intensity and a very high nausea. So this would be a very intense coaster in real life as well. What we'll do, we'll just speed up and hope that someone comes to fix this. I shouldn't be having to do this at this stage. My staff are useless. Is it any of them actually? Oh, someone's repairing it, okay. It's, yeah, this is not the slickest ever into a scenario. And now we've gone way too fast, so let's try again with the second car. And maybe the operations aren't too bad, let's see. No, it still stops at the top of the hill. But that's fine, I've tried all I can do. All you can do is try. I think I've got it set to something like minimum wait time 35, maximum wait time 45 or something, so it shouldn't be on there longer than 10 seconds, but still it's not very realistic. So there's a beyond vertical drop into a loop, into a sort of overbank turn, into a 0G roll, and then a sort of load of helixes and corkscrews and other inversions. It fires through this layout well too quick, and there's so many inversions I can't really name all of them while it goes round. So, but I really like how this turned out, and the track colour reminds me quite a bit of Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. I think that just looks really cool, that track colour on this coaster, and it fits well with the theming and the map as well. And the station really is the sort of highlight of this one. It's probably one of the best things I've built in vanilla, to be honest, that station. And yeah, the coaster operates quite well as well. I mean, the operations on it are terrible, but we managed to get, how many trains are on there? 4, I think. 4 or 5. Don't know where it says, down here somewhere. Yeah, 5 out of 5. Yeah, so we've got 5 trains running on it. There's a separate entrance and then an exit to load and unload the guests. So yeah, we're doing the best we can with it, and obviously it runs fine. The park's now making plenty of money every month and operating nicely. Guest happiness rating is up as well. So a quick overview of the park again then. That's our completed Mystic Oasis. Really happy with how this one turned out, as I said before. I've just remembered actually the thing I was going to mention about Sandbox. The only problem with it is this map is supposed to be really hot and dry and pretty much never rain. But with Sandbox enabled, it just turns the weather back to normal, I think. So it's rained quite often. You might see parts of the time lapse it rains a bit, and then I sort of fast forward because I just can't build things in the rain. It goes too dark in this game. And yeah, so that's one of the sort of funny things about Sandbox. It changes the weather back to normal. Just something to note. But should we take a quick look at night as well? Just so you can see, very basic lighting, although I did light up some of the buildings with some nice coloured lighting as well, just using the spotlight. And some of these sort of adventure lights around the back of the park as well, I think works out quite well. And all in all, that's us done for this one, so let's quit and go back to the main screen. There we are with the 2 gold coins for completed Mystic Oasis, and that brings us on to, well, that opens up Archipelago Adventures, but I think we're going to play Nova Labs next, which again is a completely different theme. Sci-fi is not something I'm particularly good at, but it's something that I'm looking forward to trying again, because obviously it's a long time since I did this before. And again, I think we've got a limited amount of time to complete this one in. So yeah, we'll see, we'll get to that one in the next episode, but that does it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.